Good afternoon, everybody. Today's date is Wednesday, May 5th, 2021. This budget hearing is called to order. Ms. Hayes, will you please call roll?
Councilwoman Robinson.
Present.
Councilman Warren.
Present.
Councilman Covette.
Here.
And Chair Morgan.
Here.
Also, Councilwoman Easter Thomas is on the line.
Okay.
Present.
All right. Draw attention to the documents in front of council members. We have today's presentations printed off as well as an amended hearing schedule. So we had to make some adjustments to the hearing, and the first change, you'll see them highlighted in yellow. And the first change comes tomorrow, where between 3:30 and 4, we're going to have a council grant discussion. So just a heads up to that. We've already had some ideas put forth of how to make the process more efficient this year. So food for thought. One was the proposal done by Councilman Jones yesterday about the grantees that were requesting under $15,000 and under $25,000. Another idea that was proposed is that if there is nonprofit ABC, for example, and they're requesting $30,000, and you know you're going to grant them the full amount of their request, that we might be able to get those names ahead of time, put them on somewhat of a consent agenda. If there are no objections from council members, we could go ahead and do those grants without having to hear them present. And then there's a third idea that has been floated around for thought, is that we go ahead and make our recommendations on the grantees and the amount that we want to distribute to them. So each council member have an allocation of $200,000 and go ahead and submit. And then once we get those numbers, we can look and see if there's any overlap and have adjustments. And that might deter the need to have any or hardly any presentations whatsoever. We could still have presentations for council members that might want to request them. So if you have other ideas, we'll discuss those tomorrow. And if you have other ideas, please bring them to the table. But before we begin today's agenda, Chief Ford had a few comments that she wanted to share. Was I wrong? Oh, you don't have comments? I'm sorry, I was misinformed. All right. Yeah.
How many budgets have we done?
Isn't there that really important thing you wanted to get off your chest today? No. Okay, no. So our agenda today, our agenda today is HCD, Information Technology, Parks, Police, MATA, Public Works, Sewer, Stormwater, and Memphis River Parks. Up first is HCD. And if you will introduce yourself, your team, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. My name is Mari Albertson. I'm the Deputy Director at Housing and Community Development, serving for a short term as the Interim Director. I have with me Harry Green, who's our Senior Operations Administrator, and Ms. Latanya Alexander, who's our Budget Manager. So today we have one request for the FY22 CIP budget. Hopefully most of you are familiar with the South City project, which is the revitalization of the community surrounding the former Foot Homes public housing development and the development itself. This $2 million request is critical to filling a gap in the 6th and final phase of housing. This phase will be next to the 5th phase, which is senior housing. The phase will include 80 units of a mix of affordable and market rate housing. Happy to answer any questions if anyone has anything.
First, can we get a motion and a second on this item? Okay, it's been moved by Councilman Warren, seconded by Councilman Robinson. Any comments or questions? Councilman Warren.
What's the critical need?
There is a gap in the project, and we met with the administration last year. We committed to requesting additional CIP funds if the developer and MHA would also do some additional fundraising. They were successful in getting an additional allocation through the state's Tennessee Housing Development Agency, as well as a supplemental allocation of Choice Neighborhoods grant funds through HUD. So,
So the gap is a financial gap,
Yes,
not like a building gap.
no, it is a financial gap.
Thank you.
All right. Please show Councilman Logan and Councilman Carlisle here for the record as well. One question I have is about the carry forward and the Raleigh Mall development. What is the $225,000 that we've still got left to complete?
This is just an old amount that's in the budget as a lease payment that was just for some reason never appropriated. So we'd like to carry it forward to make sure that those funds are really there, and then they can be much used as part of completing the repair shop.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments or questions from council members? All right, seeing none, I assume you're ready to vote. All those in favor for the Housing and Community Development CIP budget, which includes one project totaling $2 million, signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? Opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. This budget does pass. Thank you all very much.
Thank you so much.
Carlisle. Ms. Bailey, will you please introduce yourself and your team, and then the floor is yours for the presentation.
Hello, council members. I'm Kimberly Bailey, Chief Information Officer for the City of Memphis. This is Wendy Harris, our Deputy CIO, and joining us is our IT Finance Manager, Tim Anderson. Okay, are we ready? Okay, great. Well, we'll get started with the capital improvement budget for the IT division for FY22. And we'll just get right into the presentation. You did receive a strategic plan for IT. Ashley is going to hand those out for you. Ashley's going to hand those out for you. I just want you to be aware that everything that we ask for in our CIP budget aligns with in our 4-year strategic plan. Not asking you to go through that now, but just so that you know every project and every endeavor that we do within IT aligns with that, so that you can understand exactly what we'll be doing, okay? We'll start with the first screen, which is our Information Technology Division Desktop and Application Infrastructure and IT organization. And there, as you can see, we're asking for a total cost of $2 million over 2 years. But with the funding for F22, $500,000, this is where we upgrade old equipment for employees and within the infrastructure. We try to do a rotating upgrade of every 5 years, but we want to get to the point where we are upgrading based on the warranty of the equipment, so that we're not getting into a place where we're out of support. So if we can do it by the warranty, it allows us to be just in a better position. Do you have any questions about this particular item before we move on?
We're going to hold all questions till the end of the presentation.
Okay, absolutely. Thank you. The next project is our cybersecurity infrastructure upgrade. And of course, we all know how important having great security within our infrastructure is. We have implemented a cybersecurity education plan for all employees. We have a monthly security newsletter, as well as the security compliance training. And in order to continue that, because we know our highest risk is the users internally, more so than externally. So we want to make sure we're able to keep up with that education. but have the infrastructure to support any attacks that could come, internal or external. And so we have various projects, as you can see, the edge firewall upgrade, as well as enterprise network intrusion detection. In addition to that, we will be looking at some enhanced email security solutions, as well as some automated pen testing. The next project, operational infrastructure enhancement. Last year, this included moving our data center from the basement of this building to another better outfitted facility at the library. So we'll be continuing with those type of infrastructure efforts. We need to replace the HVAC system in the library since we moved in there to make sure we're keeping the proper cooling, as well as our endpoint management expansion. We are also in need of upgrading our disaster recovery. We currently have a facility in Smyrna where we have DR, but we're looking for a better facility to do that so that we can expand our DR. And more infrastructure maintenance. We want to be able to get some more fiber without, in the city, as well as some more public access areas that we want to be able to upgrade, and just doing various things in that area that we'll be able to do. And you can see there's various amounts of money in the out years, so we'll be building on this project year over year. Our last ask for you is our implementation modernization, and that is where we have our current Chronos, which is UKG, time and attendance. We want to make sure we have some additional funding to make sure we finish that successfully, as well as we will have an upgrade that is mandatory for our financial system of Hyperion at the end of this upcoming year, December 2021. So we'll need funding for that. We want to do some cloud upgrades to our CRM, as well as just some other efforts where we want to use more cloud technology, try to look at some chatbots, try to look at some AI technology as much as we can. So that's what we're asking for FY22. Those are the 4 projects that we want to present for you today. And if you have some questions, I'm prepared to answer those.
Okay, I'll call Councilman Carlisle first and then Councilman Warren.
Thank you, Chairman. Chief Bailey, a pleasure as always. This is like, I know McGowan's probably gonna be excited when I say this too, but this is like the department that probably doesn't get as much love as it should, but it may be the most important thing that we focus on. I know for the mayor's administration, like Doug always says this, bringing our city business into the 21st century. It's kind of shocking. Some of the things that you run into that would be considered from a management standpoint an obsolete function, but neither here nor there. I'm always supportive of trying to get us moving forward. What do we do with our surplus hardware?
Surplus hardware
Right.
That's still functional?
If you're rolling on warranty, right, so you're not paying an extended repair or repair fees or whatnot, what are we doing with that surplus hardware?
If we can reissue, we can. If it's no longer usable, we have a recycling company that picks that up.
On 5-year-old hardware?
It just depends on what's going on with the hardware.
Okay.
Some of it we can reuse. If there's some efforts that we can do, kind of like at our community centers or something within a more educational realm to help us, senior centers, we always try to use that for those particular efforts.
That's what I was wondering. Okay, and then, even though I don't know, it's maybe partially in here, where are we in our Oracle back of house update?
So currently we are about to do an Oracle EBS. So we have 2 Oracle environments. We have
Right.
the cloud for our HCM, and we have our payroll, which is the on-prem EBS. So there's a mandatory upgrade of that at the end of this year. We just selected the vendor for that. It was put out to RFP, and we'll be having a kickoff meeting, I think, in the next week for that particular project. We have to get it done before December ends, and that will, because it'll be at end of life.
Yeah, I'm not here every day, but if I were, that would be a significant priority for me.
It is.
When you go through briefly, you go through your vision, your strategic plan, almost every one of those things aligns within that as we operate more efficiently and effectively, and again, in the 21st century environment.
Yes, sir.
And specifically, as it came up when we were talking about solid waste, and not to bring that back into the realm, but this idea of it frustrates me when we have so many different management systems or ways in which we manage our time cards, et cetera. Like, right, like each group kind of does their own thing, like the police department does its own thing. And when you, I'm just going to repeat that, they shouldn't. That's right. We don't live it every day. And so when we go to ask for information, it needs to be able to be queued and pulled pretty rapidly. And so we can kind of keep a handle from our end, because like you, I'm sure, we get lots of questions out there in the public, and you feel like a dummy when you don't know what could be a very basic answer. So anyway, I know that that's not the heart of this presentation. These are pieces of it, certainly what's going on at the library with our servers, but that's a significant priority that really needs to come along. I know McGowan's probably just like, we know, man. I get it.
I totally understand, and of course, EBS is so we don't have priorities that's like 1, 2, and 3. Everything's A, 1B, 1C. So everything's number 1. So our UKG is number 1. Our phone system upgrade is number 1. EBS upgrade is number 1. Everything. And so we are getting there as fast as we can, and with your approval of these additional funds, we'll get there.
Awesome. And I assume contractors, I mean, to me, I guess this really goes more into your operating budget, right? Like this is a CIP ask, and I don't know if it's outside contracting help for a short period of time to accelerate that, but like those are the things that I'm serious about. So
what we have done for some of these projects, we have brought on individuals and paid them out of the project budget so that they can help us accelerate implementation. We do have a heavy contracting staff in the IT division already. We have about 28 complement, which you'll hear me ask for a little more next week. But the remainder of the 80 people is contract employees.
Got it.
And so we can't always take them off of the operational functions for the IT division. So there are opportunities to bring them into the project and additional resources so that we can expedite implementation.
I appreciate it. Chair, you.
Thank you. Councilman Warren.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I understood that we moved our servers, I guess, to the library. I'm wondering, do we have generator capacity at the library? I had an office in that across the parking lot, and we went down as far as electricity probably 4 or 5 times a year. It's sort of a weak area in the grid over there. Have y'all had any problems with loss of electricity yet?
We haven't had any issues with electricity, but the cooling factor is very important to keep servers at a certain temperature. And so now that we're there, we know there's a need to get that HVAC system upgraded. I will check to see if we've had anything that I don't know of specifically, but nothing reported at this time as far as electrical.
It might be wise to have something that could at least run your air conditioners and your servers in that particular area, unless the library's got some sort of special electrical grid going to it. I'd check that out.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Johnson.
Thank you. How you doing, Ms. Bailey?
I'm great. How are you?
I guess I have 2 questions to start with. Where would I check, and this may go to Ms. Ford as well, where would I check what their budget was last year on all of these projects? I've been looking for those numbers.
So these are new projects for...
I know, but I'd still like to know what the CIP budget was last year.
Okay, the entire budget.
Oh, certainly. I can give you that for last year.
Is it something you've already given us, or do I have to go back to? I have that document. That's what I have to refer to. I go pull it out.
Yes, ma'am, that should be it. If you, and when we pull into information technology, I can tell you, their total budget, last year was $8 million. $8,050,000. And if you recall, there was a piece of this originally that we had, I think it was like 7.5 of it, we originally had allocated from CARES Act money, and in July, council ended up doing a switch on that, so we added the 7.5 back. But their projects last year included the telephone systems upgrade, which is an ongoing project. Last year, that project it's a $5.3 million project. We're at probably close to full spend on the telephone project. Yeah, we're at a little over $3 million on the spend on that. So that's ongoing. Last year, we also had the time and attendance system, which we talked about earlier, which is a real priority for us. That's kind of like a 1A. And that was $1.5 million. We had the last piece of the data center relocation, which was a $1.5 million project spent to date last year, and the total project on that was $2.5 million. And last year, we had the allocation of $550,000, which was part of that budget. And also the desktop and application infrastructure last year was $500,000. And on that project, that's a $2.2 million project. We are approximately a little over $1 million on that project that is ongoing. The network infrastructure upgrades, last year we had an allocation of $200,000. And on that project, it was a $1.9 million project, and we are 1.8 into that project.
Okay, so would that represent then carryovers that's still out there?
No, ma'am. It's not because it's already been totally allocated and appropriated.
Okay. So I guess I'm trying to figure out how much we're still working on the past to get it done to the future.
Right. So, for instance, that project is 97% completed. So there's just a little bit left on that. So we can, and one of the things that we talked earlier, I guess, day before yesterday, about adding project spend to these, but all the three that you are hearing today are brand new projects. Those are new asks.
Okay, now I'm also comparing it to this document that you gave the first day.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what's your total amount of your CIP today?
The entire CIP is
It's $3,500,000.
That's what I was thinking, but I think in my mind, I'm adding it up. It seems like it's more than $3 million.
some of it is out here.
No, the ask for this year is $3,500,000.
Right.
All new projects.
Yeah, but when I add it up this way, it might be a little bit more.
Councilman, could you also please use your mic for council members down here on this other end?
I'm sorry.
So on the first year for the desktop application, the ask for FY22 is $500,000.
Right.
Okay.
Where is that now? I'm just
It's on
trying
page
to
2.
If you look on page 2.
Okay. I'm looking at I'm looking back up here, the total cost and the FY, okay.
Right.
Okay, it's in a different place than what the other ones were. Okay. Okay. That's 15, 1.5, 2.5. I can add it, I see 3.5. Okay. That number was different in a different location yesterday. Okay, cool. That's it. I thank you.
Thank you. And please show Councilman Smiley here for the record. And Councilman Ford and Councilman Swearingen is online. So, quick question, or a quick question of explanation. I've always felt that this is the division that is the most difficult to have oversight over because it requires the most amount of technical expertise that is really unique to y'all, and it doesn't necessarily lend across other divisions. So there's an enormous amount of trust in y'all's work and capability, and thus far I've heard nothing but glowing reviews. But help us explain it to our constituents as well. So like page number 4, when we're talking about these infrastructure upgrades, and you talked about fiber expansion or increased fiber capability amongst those projects that we're upgrading, and it's a big project, total cost of $8.5 million. Is that entirely internal, or are we talking about external as well?
It's a combination of both over the out years. The first year of that $1 million will be primarily internal. We'll still be working on some networking efforts that we need to fix internally so that we can start adding on to the external. Once we fix that, those years afterwards, we can start definitely doing more things outside of just our internal enterprise.
And what does that mean for the citizens?
So for me, I believe we want to align this with our Smart Memphis plan that has come out. There are areas in that plan that align where ITD is a lead agency. So everywhere that there is, we want to align our budget with those plans so that we are in alignment with everything that Mayor Strickland would like for us to do. So when you think about public safety and they're talking about things with the cameras and, you know, expanding that. Also, just expanding our fiber reach into the communities more, seeing where we can connect more from our libraries and community centers with the schools. So those are efforts that we can do. They're lined out in that plan, and we want to align as well so that we're not having dual efforts or competing efforts.
And I think one of the important things is the network, network infrastructure maintenance. The community centers and libraries, all of the aging network equipment, that's a priority and has been and aligns with Memphis 3.0 plan. So I know that's important to the citizens. So we are making sure that they have the proper connectivity that they need.
Thank you. It's really easy for us to go to a park and say, hey, that bench is broken, or to show up to a police station and see that they don't have enough cars. If we go look at y'all's servers, it's just a bunch of blinking dots. We don't quite.
we don't like blinking dots.
until somebody's Wi-Fi doesn't work.
We don't want a bunch of blinking dots.
Any other comments or questions from council members? All right, seeing none, we'll move to a voice vote. All those in favor of the information technology CIP budget, which is 4 projects totaling $3.5 million, signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? Opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
All right. Next up is Parks. I believe they are walking in the door about now. Are they out there or? And a second on the CIP?
Second.
Second.
Good. Moved by Chairman Colvett, seconded by Councilman Carlisle. Director Walker, if you introduce yourself and the team that you have here with you today, then the floor is yours for the presentation.
Thank you, sir. Nick Walker, Director of Parks and Neighborhoods for the City of Memphis, 2599 Avery. I'm accompanied today by Mike Flowers, who's the Administrator for Planning for the division, and hiding out there in the back is Cleo Griffin, who is my deputy. Okay, so first off, before we get into the actual projects themselves, I do want to point out something which, in the conversations the other day with the chiefs, we thought was important to reiterate. The park's annual CIP budget is obviously in addition to Accelerate Memphis. It is our attempt to combine the two so that we're leveraging both. The annual spend that we do to maintain and improve things in addition to the transformative funds that the $75 million will allow us. So it's important to have that context as you're looking at this budget to understand that this budget allows us to do those transformative things as well. So I'll get off my soapbox and we'll move on to the first item, which is the final installment of the Ed Rice Community Center replacement. This is the final $4.8 million necessary to finish out construction and FF&E for the center, putting us at a total of $8.4 million for the project cost. The next item is the Park Services cover line. This is the funds that allow us to do a multitude of things, anything from our paving projects, site refurbishment, repaving of parking areas, the playground surfaces, and installation of signage. In addition, this is a source of funding. You guys just had one of these Tuesday where general services had not, or enough funds had not been allocated for the completion of a project, and money was brought over from the park's cover line to supplement that and finish out the construction of the Lichterman Greenhouse, for instance, or the Pine Hill Golf Bridge. The next item is speaking of things at Lichterman, the Lichterman Nature Center major maintenance. This will be an ongoing project. This is for essentially, if I'm correct, Mike, the A&E to evaluate major maintenance that needs to be done at Lichterman Nature Center. The hope is that this will allow us to develop the plans that would be funded in the out years. The next one, as Councilman Carlisle was asking me about as we walked in, is the Audubon Golf Course cart path repaving. Anyone who's been out there recently is well aware that the course itself is in really good shape. The cart path is horrible. So this funding is a project that we had identified as a priority for parks a couple of years ago, and is actually currently, because we can do the design on it in-house, currently being designed in-house by one of our landscape architects. The next item is one that you should be familiar with at this point, which is the tennis major maintenance, where we go through and annually reconstruct and resurface tennis courts throughout the city. The two identified for this year are Frazier Park behind the Ed Rice Community Center, the completion of the other 4 courts there, and resurfacing of 4 courts at the Singleton Outdoor Tennis Courts. This is, as you can see, there's lots of out years on this because this is, I believe, a 10-year process to do all the courts in the city. And then the final item that we have up is zoo major maintenance. As you're hopefully aware, we contribute to major maintenance at the zoo. We do have the breakdown of the projects that this year's $250,000 would include if you guys would like to hear a description of those projects. And that is our presentation.
Thank you very much. Councilman Warren, then Councilman Carlisle.
What percentage of the funds are Accelerated Memphis in here for you this year?
Are you talking about that act to supplement?
Yeah, that act to
Accelerate
supplement.
Memphis?
How much do we supplement with Accelerated Memphis for you?
I mean, really, because Accelerate Memphis is targeted at deferred maintenance, the only one that I could really see, a couple of them, Audubon will go hand in hand because there is funding identified in the plan to make improvements to the clubhouse at Audubon. Additionally, Audubon Park, our hope is to do a pavilion there and a playground that was identified by Councilman Morgan last budget. You know, and then the rest of them, it's the cover line will go hand in hand with the repairs that we're making, but there's not a direct corollary really on the rest of them. No, that's sort of what I was trying to say, is that it's a two-track thing. We need this so that we don't have to deduct from the 75 that is the Accelerate Memphis.
Thank you, Councilman Carlisle.
Thank you, Chair. That's what Clubhouse is one of my questions. I'll just say this now, and it's much part of a larger conversation that needs to be had with the mayor and Chief McGowan, but Audubon is a crown jewel. I would tell you, outside of the large landscapes of Shelby Farms and Overton Park, which both are like beyond parks because of all the things that are around them, that I'd be willing to bet you that Audubon is maybe the most diverse park in the city. And with the Leftwich Tennis Center, the University of Memphis going in there, a larger, more meaningful look at that golf course should be taken. And I know there have been conversations, but it's something that I just want to go back and say that I'd like to circle back and talk about that. And I know we need a partner out of the university, and that's always an issue, or not an issue, but that's another variable. But I worry and I wonder if spending $1 million at Audubon today makes sense versus holding off and reevaluating in a larger picture. Maybe it's a pipe dream, but it's just a thought. I don't know.
I will, first of all, I'll echo your comments. I agree. I think that Audubon, we've talked about it as a natural fit for, to be a recreational multi-use facility. It makes a lot of sense. I apologize, my I'm sleeping. But the second thing is it relates to spending money and that being a sunk valuation. Pine Hill is a perfect example of this. We are, as a part of Accelerate Memphis, redesigning the course there and moving the clubhouse from the backside down to Mallory. Right after we just repaved the golf cart paths. You just have to take it into consideration. To me, though, the time frame for any of those things does not make the cart paths there today any less terrible.
And I wouldn't see a major redesign of the way the course is laid out anyway. But
no. Unless we were to have some conversations with my buddy over at the Botanic Gardens, I don't know that there's a lot of room for us to edge out.
Right.
But I know, and Shirley, who's on the board, just gave me an ugly look, well deserved. But all that to say, I agree with you, but I don't view any expenditure on Audubon today as impacting that larger discussion. Okay. I think it's important to do it.
All right, I can buy that. Since I have you here, how many projects, since we've gone through committee now, we have a vote in 2 weeks, we think we've got our bond timeline. How many of the Accelerate projects do you think you'll be able to take on in the parks in the next calendar year?
We actually have had this conversation. The big thing, and the thing we're probably ready to hit the ground running on July 1, is the resurfacing of the playgrounds. Our hope is to do 13 of those starting July 1. Additionally, my buddy Chief Ford over there has found some money for us to start design work on Pine Hill. We've already engaged through the use of a overarching project manager design teams to look at all the other ones. It's going to be so phased that I think realistically the smart thing to do would be to wait until Craig Hodges, who's serving as the sort of PM from the city side, has put together that timeline to share with you.
Yeah, I'd love to see that when he's ready. All right, thanks, Chair. You're back. Oh, Doug,
Chief McGowan.
I just want to echo that. So no one's pushing harder on that than I am. I've asked our entire team. I said I want to know how many projects on the 1st of July will have a sign up and a shovel in the ground. So they're assembling that now. They're phasing those out. Our neighborhoods want to feel this impact. That goes for not just the parks, but for the anchors. As you know, we're doing the small area plans in the neighborhood. So our aim is to deploy all this and to make all these improvements before the end of the calendar year 2023. That means we got to get started this summer. So we are pushing very hard. Nick's done a really good job of saying, don't pin me down yet because Chief's pushing me hard to get these things done. So we intend to bring you back that list of what we're going to do for Accelerate Memphis across the board, not just in parks, but we intend to get this money in these projects in these parks, putting down splash pads, doing the major maintenance at some of the facilities, getting Pine Hill reconfigured. It's going to take a while to do, historic Melrose. It's going to take a while to do Geisman as a brand new community center. We have to get started ASAP. So there's a lot that we have hired a kind of a broad ranging owners representative, folks who are experienced at managing a myriad of projects, and they're going to help us with about fully half of the projects to make sure that they keep the contractors on time and on budget, and to make sure that they're, we're getting good information back. Not that Mike and his team aren't super capable, but we're quadrupling the workload for those guys. So we want to make sure we have help to get these delivered on time. So that's a general answer, but believe me, they know that we have to deliver a list that we can get started on by the 1st of July.
Thank you. You all set, Councilman Canale?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't think it comes to any shock to anybody in this body of my interest in golf courses. I don't agree with you 100%, Director, on that it wouldn't have an impact, because some of the holes could possibly be rerouted if we do a total redesign, which I've expressed interest in, not putting a Band-Aid on it, but really making it a first-class entire block of public property with Leftwich. Botanic Gardens continues to upgrade. Dixon just did a major upgrade. The new senior center just over across the street on Cherry. So I would ask that before we jump in and do a full cart path resurfacing or whatever it takes for all 18 holes, I think we should pause. And if we want to do the front 9 first, I think that there could be some changes to the back 9. And I don't want to, because I know how expensive cart paths can be, and I know that you don't want to do what we've done on city streets where we go repave them and then we tear them up a few months later. That we just pause for a second on that. I have a great amount of love for Audubon. I know the potential that it's got, and I really would like to see if there's an appetite from this body and from some donors in this city to renovate it. I think it would be fabulous for the city. So that being said, I don't know that we need $500,000 from the start. If not, I would like to at least toss around the idea of what it would take, or possibly doing the front 9 first and holding off on the back 9. Thank you, Chairman.
The only suggestion I would offer, and like I said, it is everybody's CIP budget, not just mine, but I would like to see, given the hypothetical nature of those, that if we could go ahead and fund it, whether it's used to do the cart paths or ultimately is rolled into a larger project, is fine. But I would hate to $1 today for the hope of 20 down the road. To me, those cart paths are in really bad shape, and it's impacting rounds played there. So that's.
You're absolutely right. However, I would say that if you gave me $500,000 today, I would take a bulldozer and I would run across the clubhouse immediately and put a trailer on the property until we could build a new one.
Sure.
Thank you.
Chief McGowan.
Thank you for those comments, Councilman Canale. With just a thought here is, if we approve the parks budget, we have your guidance here, and certainly I think we all agree, being familiar with that, the front 9, we can certainly get started on that, and then we're happy to immediately have a conversation about how we make the maximum use of that. It's all for the improvement of the golf course. So I know there's several plans under discussion, so we'll come back to you. Thanks for highlighting that and zeroing in, and I know there's a lot of needs there. So if we can, we'll just come to an agreement on the best path forward for the front 9, and then we can work on the timing and phasing of the other elements of the project, if that's okay with you.
Councilman Canale, are you all set? Okay. I'll say, if I can read between the lines, it sounds like there's a rumblings of a potential motion, and it might not be today, but let's have those conversations between now and wrap up if possible. All right. Councilman Warren?
Yes, I think Councilman Canale needs to get an exploratory committee of 3 other people to go over there and play around just to explore the course and make sure we can do that. So I'm volunteering for that group.
If y'all just let me know which person you want to have paired up with Mickey so that they get that handicap, I'll make sure I can get that set up.
All right, thank you. Any other comments or questions from council members? All right, seeing none, we will move to a vote to approve the CIP Parks budget, including 6 projects totaling $8,350,000. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? All right, opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. Thank you all very much. And Mike, if I can just see you for a quick second, follow up on the email. To the police CIP budget. Can I get a motion on this item?
Second.
All right, it has been moved by Councilman Smiley, seconded by Councilman Warren. Interim Director Ryall, if you'll introduce yourself and your team, and then the floor is yours for the presentation.
Very good, and good afternoon, everyone. Thank you. I'm Interim Director Mike Ryle, 170 North Main, 38103. I have with me Lieutenant Kedra Lockhart, been with the city for a long time.
Good afternoon.
And she kind of heads up our special projects like this. So if you would let me just go ahead and get started.
Take it away, and we'll save all questions until the end of the presentation.
Very good. So the police capital improvement budget has 6 projects. 5 are carryovers, so you should be familiar with 5 of these projects because they have been continuing. We have 1 new project, but the total cost is $7.9 million for this coming up FY. The first project is PD 04022, and that's our in-car video, our GPS, and our body-worn camera project. That is a total funds expended to date is $9.7 million and some change. The total project cost is $11,747,100. Our funding source is GO bonds, of course, and our total FY22 funding will be $300,000. And that will be used. What we're doing is we're integrating our body-worn camera, in-car video, and GPS into Axon as a single source platform so that it will be better managed and offer better services for our project. The next one is PD 04025, and that's our radio systems upgrade. So in December of 2018, our radio system reached its end of life cycle for parts and service. And in essence, that caused us to redo the entire infrastructure for our radio system. And these are the radios that we used in our police day to day. This is a city-county split, with the city taking 51% of the cost, county at 49%. Funds expended to date is $22.9 million. Total project cost is $37,300,000. Of course, the funding source is the GO bonds. And if you see FY22 ask, is going to be $6 million for our side. And as you watch it progress to FY23, there's a $5 million tag there, which should finish the project, which is a very good thing. But you have to understand, this technology will be compatible with the P25 system, which will allow us to share radio with the city, county. God forbid if anything terrible should happen, we have instant communication with other agencies. So it's been a great system for us. The next one's PD 02013. That's our police academy renovation. We are totally kind of renovating our police academy structure. In FY18, we started with design, and now this year we're doing a classroom build out. That total project cost is a little over $4.6 million. Of course, again, GO bond funding. This year, FY22, we're asking for $575,000, as I stated just a second ago, for that classroom build out. This project will continue into FY23 and FY24, where it will be finished. In each of those two FYs, we'll ask for $750,000 per FY to finish this project. Next one is our radio maintenance rehabilitation, PD 04029. And on Flicker Street, where our 911 center is, we have a radio maintenance building. It's archaic, it's old. We're kind of updating it. It didn't even have a separate women's restroom, so we're modernizing that a little bit to make it functional. That total cost for that project is $2 million. GO bond funding. And this FY, we're asking for $230,000 for construction cost. And next FY23, we'll ask for $300,000, which should finish our project. Again, this is a carryover. And we're also kind of upgrading it so it will be a shared police and fire facility, so that we can fit some of the fire units in there as they do some of that radio maintenance and rehabilitation and some of that service cost. The new project is PD 0, and the numbers to be determined. It's our violent crimes unit renovation at 51 South Flicker. So we have a violent crimes unit, as most of you know. We had to find a housing place for them, and that's on that Flicker Street facility. It's old. Some of you that have been around might remember it. It used to be our city impound lot there. So it goes back that far. Have a great staff of investigators in that house, but there's some problems in that building, leaking, some mold, things like that we just need to look at. That total package cost is $382,000, and we're asking for that funding to be completed in FY22 so that we can get that upgrade done. The next one is our new Mount Moriah station. Again, this is a carryover. The building was built in 1980. We've spent $662,000 to date. Total project cost is $9.1 million and some change. Again, GO bond funding. This year, FY22, we're asking $500,000, and that's for initial construction costs. And what we're doing, we're building that building from ground up on the same campus as our Mount Station. So we'll live in the old building while the new building's being built, but it is much needed because of the age of the building. If you look at the carryout 23 and 24, we'll be asking for a quite largeable sum, $7.5 million in 23, $1.4 million in 24 to complete that project. And barring any questions, that's our presentation.
All right, thank you very much. Councilman Canale, then Councilman Smiley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First, Director, thank you so much for your willingness to serve as our interim director. And you've been a true gem to the Memphis Police Department. You will most certainly be missed come June when you ride off into the sunset. But we will absolutely wish you all the best. But you've been nothing short of a gem for MPD. On the in-car video, what's the average life of these? We have so many cars that are in dire need of replacement. We certainly need more cars, and in my perfect world, we'd have take-home cars for our officers So is this something that is installed and removed, and or is the life short enough where we can't take it out and place it in a new vehicle?
So I don't know life years. We have a maintenance system that we repair and fix, but that is transferable product, so it can come from one car to another car to be reinstalled in case the life of the car, dies before the product dies. We can move it.
Okay. That's it, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Smiley.
So where's the new station going to be located?
And the new station will be on the same campus as the old station on Mount Moriah, right there where Mount Moriah Station is, Halley Stadium at that campus there.
Where all basketball courts.
So just really a few feet east of the existing building.
You're gonna redesign the parking lot?
We are going to have to kind of do some kind of tweaking to the parking lot area, and we're working with Parks to really drill down on that design.
So, assuming construction happens, construction happens, and you close down the entrance to get to the basketball court?
No, sir, there will be a definite kind of a tweaking of the ingress egress, but we are making sure that the effort to get to the basketball courts will be served easily, but there will be a little encroach when we drop that building there and begin that design.
What's the exact date of that?
So the official start will start the FY22 with some of the smaller construction piece, but FY23 will be your big build out.
Okay, so no exact date then.
Right.
That's all for me.
All right. Thank you, Councilman Jones. Then Councilman Johnson.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
Director Ryle, I'm thinking about I haven't read the Deloitte study, but one of the takeaways that I've received, maybe from a glance of the executive summary as well as published reports about it, are that we have some outdated, we do things clerically as opposed to electronically. Is there not anything in the capital ask to help improve and provide efficiencies or update some of the things? Would that not be included in your capital ask for this year?
So per se, I think some of this may help with some of that, but not specifically, no, sir.
Okay. I would, this is still during budget. I don't know what the plans are for the department. Even if it's looking at how we report and track overtime, I think just for the sake of efficiency, Ms. McGowan, I hope that, and Chief Ford, and that we would talk to the new director to talk about some of those things just to take advantage. There are plenty of governmental bodies that have had studies done, and all those things do is collect dust. And with having the largest individual budget of any department, that I would think that if there's some efficiencies anywhere to be had, it would be in that. So I would be hopeful if y'all can come back perhaps doing this. And this is one of those things where if we have to, capital to me is for long-term investments. And that's a long-term investment that, according to that study, is long overdue. And so I'd be willing for us to increase what our capital ask is within reason for us to address some of those needs. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilman Johnson.
Yes, how you doing?
Hey, Councilwoman.
Could you please go back over your project PD 044022? I want to make sure I have the same numbers that you read.
Page number 1.
Page 1, yes.
Okay, the in-car video.
Yes.
GPS, yes, ma'am. Just go back over that. Okay, so that's our in-car video, our GPS, which is just that global positioning surface and our body-worn camera.
Right.
Right now we have 2 vendors. Our body-worn camera is Axon. Our in-car video is GTAC. And separating those 2 vendors is a little bit heavy lifting. We're going to bring all of that up under one vendor, which is Axon, and they will provide the service for both of those efforts. And it will really help us not only with cost saving, but with
just easier maintenance and management of the product.
Your numbers, what are your funds expended to date? How much is that?
$9,700,000 and some
Okay.
change.
Well, like I heard 11 million, that's why I was.
So the total cost is 11.7 million.
And that includes funds that we have contracts for, but they have not been paid out yet.
Okay, is that because you're splitting it too? Because the number we have is 19 million.
Year 19 counts out years, right?
So we've got out years going from 23 to 26. In each of those out years, if you look, you know, the FY 23 be 1.4 million, 24 will be a little over 2 million, 25 will be a little over 2 million, and again, 26 will be.
Okay, that's 19, okay.
And you're correct, Councilwoman, that is not included in the total project cost.
Okay,
I apologize.
all right, thank you, Chair.
All right, thank you. Staying on this page, so if we spend the carry forward of 600,000 and then the request for this year, an additional 900,000, why, it's seemingly kind of the uptick. We've spent a lot in the past, and I feel like we've spent more than 900,000 a year in the past. Why is it 900,000 this year, but we're predicting $2 million out 2 years from now?
Go ahead and say that. Go ahead and say that.
Okay, for the total, fiscal year for 2022, we're receiving a prorated amount on that, which reduces the cost that we will pay for that first year of the new contract with everything under the one vendor Axon. And then the following fiscal years, we'll be paying the regular amount for those fiscal years.
Okay, I may just follow up with you. And on page 4, the radio maintenance rehabilitation project, what happens with the carry forward where we had at least 1.4 million allocated from last year that we weren't able to spend? Are we going to be able to spend all the $1.6 million this year?
The project for radio maintenance rehabilitation, that project actually went out to bid on last week. We had to, because of the cost of the project, we initially asked for $1,730,000. The first year we only got $1 million. The architect went back to try and break the project down. In the meantime, we asked for that $7,300,000 on last year, but we only got $500,000. So she's been trying to work with us to try and keep it within cost, but the cost of the project have gone up. And so she said, we got to get this project out to bid because the cost of it is just going to keep going up higher and higher. So the project has gone out to bid. We hope that with the $230,000, we will have enough to do our construction costs for the radio maintenance rehab, and we will come back and separately ask for the FF&E and IT monies on next year.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other questions or comments from council members? All right, seeing none, I assume you all are ready to vote. All those in favor of the police CIP budget, which is 6 projects totaling $7,987,500, signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? Can Chair, the ayes have it. CIP budget is approved.
Hey, thank y'all so much. Appreciate you.
All right, we are ahead of schedule, and on the schedule, it says break, but I saw Motion and a second on the matter. I heard a motion, from Chairman Colvett, and we'll take a second from Councilman Smiley. Mr. Rosenfeld, will you, I guess, it looks like, will you introduce yourself, and if you brought any team members with you, and then the floor is yours, for presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm Gary Rosenfeld. I'm the Chief Executive Officer of the Memphis Area Transit Authority. I appreciate the opportunity to present the MEMPHIS CIP budget to you and the council. It's great to be out and about and to be with you in person. MEMPHIS has done its best to maintain service levels through the pandemic. In fact, this week we will serve our 3 million passengers since the beginning of the pandemic in March 2020. During this time, however, it became very difficult to maintain forward motion on some of our capital projects. Difficulties with factories that produce parts and assemble vehicles slowed delivery. Difficulties within some of the companies helping NATA develop its new forward-facing and back-of-the-house systems has caused some delays as well. The good news is that the delays are within project allowances, and we are confident that the extra wait time in some cases will be well worth it for the community and for NATA. Let me begin my presentation with a capital project funding request for the Bus Rapid Transit project, or as we call it, the BRT project. As you will recall, this BRT project is high frequency, high capacity transit, which will operate between downtown and the University of Memphis. The 8-mile route will have bus stations with expanded amenities, many on-street improvements. Funding for this project is from several sources, including FTA Section 5307 funds, FTA Section 5309 funds, and a federal build grant. There's also State of Tennessee Improve Act funding in this project as well. You may recall a funding resolution passed by this council last August. FTA Section 5307 is the Urbanized Area Formula Funding Program and makes federal resources available to urbanized areas for transit capital and operating assistance in urban areas. It also can be used for transportation-related planning activities. Urbanized area is an incorporated area with a population of 50,000 or more that is designated as such by the U.S. Department of Commerce, Bureau of the Census. For urbanized areas with at least 200,000 in population and over, funds are apportioned and flow directly to a designated recipient. In the Memphis MSA, NATA is the designated recipient. As such, NATA makes applications and receives these federal funds directly. 5307 eligible activities include planning and engineering, design and evaluation of transit projects, and other technical transportation-related studies. Capital investments in bus and bus-related activities, such as replacement, overhaul, and the rebuilding of buses. Funds can support crime prevention and security equipment, along with the construction of maintenance and passenger facilities. The funds can be used for capital investments in new and existing fixed guideway systems, including rolling stock, overhaul, and rebuilding of vehicles, tracks, signals, communications, and computer hardware and software. In addition, associated transit improvements and certain expenses associated with mobility management programs are eligible under the program. All preventative maintenance and some Americans with Disability Act complementary care transit service costs are also considered capital costs in this program. Capital Investment Grants, or 5309 funding, is an FDA discretionary grant program that provides funds for transit capital investments, including heavy rail, commuter rail, light rail, streetcars, and bus rapid transit. Federal transit law requires transit agencies seeking CIP funding to complete a series of steps over several years. New starts and core capacity projects, the law requires completion of 2 phases in advance of receipt of a construction grant agreement. Those phases are project development and engineering. For small start projects, the law requires completion of 1 phase in advance of receipt of construction grant agreement, and that is project development. The law also requires projects to be rated by the FDA at various points in the process according to statutory criteria, evaluating the project justification and the local financial commitment. Build grant is US DOT better utilizing investments to leverage development or build transportation discretionary grant program. I don't make up this program funds investments in transportation infrastructure, including transit. Build transportation grants replace the Transportation Investment Generating Economic Recovery, or TIGER grant program, which this community has received. Surface Transportation Block Grant Program, or STBG, provides flexible funding that may be used by states and localities for projects to preserve and improve the condition and performance of federal aid highway, bridge, and tunnel projects on any public road, pedestrian and bicycle infrastructure, and transit capital projects, including intercity bus terminals. The FTA acts as the administering modal agency for build projects that directly impact public transportation. FTA helps to ensure that recipients have the technical assistance and support necessary to successfully complete their projects. Our total capital request for this project for fiscal 22 is $4,947,059. Since we have received our National Environmental Policy Act, or NEPA, clearance for this project, if we receive a positive rating from the DOT on our small start grant application later this year, we anticipate moving into the first construction phase of this project during the upcoming fiscal year. Next request is for Fort Transit Vision project. Our request is for $1 million, which should cover the replacement of bus shelters that will be removed as part of the termination of our MATA advertising contract. The current location of these shelters are spread throughout the city, and while there are roughly 180 of these shelters, only 33 of the shelters have average daily boarding greater than 10. The shelters will most likely not have static advertising, but will include enhanced amenities as specified in the Bus Stop Accessibility Guidelines that were adopted by the MATA Board of Commissioners. Some of the stops where current shelters are located will be located or moved so that MATA can ensure compliance with ADA path of travel guidelines. For the project, we have two line items for carry forward. Next page. One is for paratransit buses, which should be received in July and was paid for in July or August, depending on the acceptance. The carry forward amount is $851,750. The other carry forward item is for our O&M facility, which fell behind schedule due to changes of COVID-related difficulties. We are prepared to move forward land acquisition and architectural and engineering during the coming year. Carry forward amount is $1,450,000. And thank you for the opportunity to be with you today, and happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rosenfeld. Before we go to questions from council members, I'm going to ask if you and Chief Ford can help me reconcile what we have in our budget books, which is 10 projects totaling $2,885,000, and then a presentation that is not 10, but 2 projects totaling almost $6 million, and then additional 2.3 in carry forward, if that had any effect on what's in the budget book. Chief Ford, looks like you're ready.
I am, thank you.
That was your note from earlier.
That was, actually, we talked about this on Monday during the overview, where I indicated that there was a list of projects that originally had been submitted as part of the proposed budget, and I had neglected to include a MATA resolution that council approved in August of 2020, committing the $4 million, almost $5 million of funding for FY22. So in order to still balance and stay within, the less than the 90 million in our budget, we talked to Mr. Rosenfeld, and we kind of looked at all those other projects that some of them had smaller amounts, with the exception of the operations and maintenance facility, which was $1.4 million originally. And he was willing to forego all of those, use the funding that he has in place now in order to ensure funding for the BRT and then the MATA Transit Vision capital projects. So that was, I know we've all been through lots of meetings since Monday, but that was the overview that I gave, that there would be an amendment. You will see when we talk to Director Connect, that's where the other piece of this funding was changed as well. And I apologize for that. It was just, it was an oversight on my part for the resolution just slid right on by. Sorry about that.
And then, so to be clear, the motion that's on the floor to approve the MATA CIP budget is totaling which amount? Would it be the $2,885,000?
Yes.
Okay.
No.
Or no?
No, it's
Going to be the 5.947. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Just want to be clear about that.
Sorry. Thank you, sir.
Mr. Chairman, if I might add, though, we have several projects that are coming due that have already been appropriated and funded. So there's no shortage of activity at that. But we will not need any additional funding for fiscal.
Understood. Just want to make sure that we're clear on what the vote is as we proceed. All right, I have Councilman Carlisle in the queue, and followed by Councilman Jones.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm sure we'll have a much more lively discussion when we get to the operating budget in due time. I remember you gave a wonderful presentation. We've spoken several times about the BRT and transit vision. Remind me what the first phase entails. So we've spent about $5.8 million. I guess that's in design and right-of-way acquisitions or anything of that nature. What's phase one?
The design is the bulk of that money, and we have moved into right-of-way acquisition.
Okay. But you said we're going to start phase one in FY '22.
Construction.
Of construction, yeah, right. So what is phase one generally speaking?
Would be the most of the downtown corridor and the terminus at the university. Why we chose the end of the service, have to install electrical infrastructure to opportunity chargers for the electric bus.
Okay. Thank you. The second husband is coming to Memphis tomorrow to peddle the President's Transit infrastructure plan, which totals around $1.9 trillion. Obviously, there's a lot that has to happen, but what in that plan, generally speaking, you think will potentially apply directly down here, knowing that obviously it's got to go through a lot of steps? But what are you hearing?
I'm hearing that it will be heavily geared toward placing buses, so more electric fleet, rail, light rail, subway systems, and streetcar systems in the legacy community. Already have them. Opportunity. Desperately need a new. Indications are that there will be a pot of money, a larger pot of money than what is typically available. The facility opportunities over the last couple of years have been limited. $7 million at a time, and our replacement facility will be somewhere between $5 and $100 million when we're done.
Thank you, I appreciate it. Chair, I yield.
Thank you. Councilman Jones?
Thank you. Ms. Rosenfeld, going back to presentations that you've provided during our Transportation Committee meetings, was there any, I guess, projected capital needs that would have been included in there? Just to add a little bit more clarity, I think that you provided, one of the presentations you gave us, I think the number one may have been 4 million, the other may have been 9 million and some change. And I know that those could be operational, but was there any capital spending anticipated in there?
There was no serious capital spending included in those numbers.
Okay.
That the $35 million number for the implementation of the transit vision is about 95% operating money,
Okay.
And, conditions, being what they are, we've taken advantage of, some, used equipment that we've been able to latch onto that will extend the life of some of our fleet. So we should be able to cover that 5% that would have gone towards capital for a couple of years.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Please. Any other comments or questions from council members? All right, seeing none, I assume you're ready for a vote on the MATA CIP budget, which is totaling $5,947,059. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? Opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. Thank you. Thank you very much. Second gentleman for the record. that are going to require 3 separate motions and votes. So I have a motion from Chairman Colvett for this Public Works CIP budget and a second from Councilman Warren. The Director Connect, we'll take these one at a time and we'll let you go through the whole presentation and then save comments and questions for afterwards. So if you will introduce yourself and whoever is going to be helping you present for this budget, and the floor is yours.
Yes, sir. Thank you. I think Chief Ford wanted to make a comment about one of these real quick, and then I'll be glad to take over from that point. She just wanted to make a clarification.
Chief Ford.
Thank you, Council. This is just to clarify the change that we just discussed in MATA. You will see the offset from a different funding source in Director Connect's budget. So I just wanted to make sure. I know we talked about this Monday, and we just talked about it with MATA, but I want to make sure that we're all clear on that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Director Connect.
So thank you. Yes, Director Robert Connect, Public Works Director, City of Memphis. Joining me is Director Belen, who helps me obviously coordinate some of the Public Works General Fund budget and some of the Stormwater budget. So we're both here if any specific questions are will ask of us. So you are going to see 3 budgets from Public Works: the General Fund, the Sewer Fund, and the Stormwater Fund. I'm responsible for the Sewer Fund and Stormwater Fund. So those are actually, because they're separate revenues and separate funds, have their own capital budgets. So that's why there are 3 different presentations, both in capital and operating. So several council members have heard this before, but there are council members who've never seen this budget process before. Dr. Warren, Councilman Warren. So that's just kind of an explanation why there's differences in how they're funded. So the first one is going to be the Public Works budget, as Chief Ford alluded to. And hopefully each of you got this. I did preliminarily send everybody what is planned for paving in FY22. I did that so you had a chance to see it and understand both the logical processing we do to distribute those funds, the rationale, how we basically use data-driven decision-making processes to strategize and use our funds, and equitably distribute them as much as we can to each area of the city, because there is always an opportunity to pave streets, and we do have 6,750 lane miles of streets that we have to maintain. So this cover line that you're talking about here, asphalt paving cover line, funds street paving for fiscal year 22. As Chief Ford mentioned, there is a funding allocation of 16.9 in GO and 2.6 in local other. This request is the same as last year. And so it is basically just a cover line that funds both street maintenance in-house paving. So 6.5 of this will go to fund in-house paving operations. The other $13 million goes towards contractual paving that is handled by engineering. This slide is going to be our sidewalks. We ultimately have responsibility to make sure sidewalks comply with our ordinances. So what we do with these funding, with this $500,000 in funds, is we maintain existing city sidewalks. And if necessary, and we have cited a property owner who has not come into compliance with sidewalks, we have the ability to use these funds to correct the condition and then place a lien on the property owner for failure to comply with city standards. So again, this is replacing various sidewalks throughout the city. Sidewalks are about 60% of our network, if I recall. Not every street has sidewalks. That's another discussion that's obviously come up before council. The next cover line is ADA curb ramps. The city has been ongoingly replacing all of the all the curbs in the city to bring them to ADA compliance. We historically had been under consent decree, a federal consent decree, to modernize our curb ramps and make them compliant with ADA standards. We are no longer under consent decree, but we still have the obligation to do this. So we're spending $1 million to do about 1,000 curb ramps. We are several years out. We still have about 8 to 10 years to complete the process, if I recall. So it's an ongoing effort. So it'll be 8 to 10 years before we can complete that. Next project is a bridge repair cover line. The city has a large number of bridges, 402 bridges throughout the city of Memphis, that we have to ensure comply with state standards. The state has its own guidelines and standards that we have to adhere to, and that requires buy-in. Every 2 years we inspect and rate our bridges to ensure compliance with those standards. Obviously, that's a very important function of what we do for our infrastructure management. So this funding is towards the use of that. Most of the work we do, deck replacement, we don't usually do. If we do a major bridge replacement, it's usually a separate project. This covers basically some minor bridge repairs or minor bridge work, or the programming that may be necessary if we do need to identify the bridge is a poor rating and needs a significant project itself to replace the bridge or major components of it. The next one is Channel Avenue repaving. This is a special project in of itself because of the funding source and because it was identified specifically through the MPO through our TIP. We have a funding allocation for Harbor Avenue, and because of the allocation necessity to fund Channel as well, we're creating another project. And because it's got a large allocation of state funds through the TIP, we're showing this here as our allocation is $40,000 and $172,000 in federal grant allocation for this. So this is President's Island. The streets down there are unique and it's heavily industrial. So we've come with a project for Harbor and one for Channel. As you may have heard from most of the industry down there, they're very concerned about road conditions and then to repair them and rebuild them in a more significant way so they're more durable and they were more resilient to the conditions of the roadway. The last slide, and hopefully this is not the breakdown slide, so I'm sorry, I'll have to get you the breakdown slide. So this explains carry forward in the general fund. So you can see there is a significant amount of carry forward projects that we have on the books that are in different phases of completion. Now, the good news is that only of that money you see, only $8 million is really GO bonds. The rest of it is either federal or local other. So we have to manage and keep these projects on the books because we are committed to them. They're long-term projects. The Holmes Road and other ones you'll see on here have been going on for many, many years. And either we are in the right-of-way acquisition phase, we have like a stream mitigation thrown at us because we have to go through this environmental applications. So there's all these steps in red tape, is going to call it bureaucratic, can't talk today, bureaucratic red tape that TDOT requires of us. So all of these, other than Old Mill Roads, which has been transferred to HCD, are just in those phases. And Elvis Presley being one that's ongoing, multi-phase continuation project as well, that's actually under construction. So if anybody has any questions about any of the general fund projects, I'm glad to take those now.
Thank you very much. Councilman Canale?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Director Blinn and Director Connect. So the out years from FY 23 through 26, we are projecting to still spend $19.5 million. I know you're never caught up in paving, but do you project at a certain point where we could, is there anywhere in the near next 10 years where we feel like that we can scale that back because we've made such significant progress?
Unfortunately, I would say no. We have 6,700 lane miles of streets, and if you want to pave them every 25 years, like our goal is, it is a pretty significant investment. Okay. And costs have gone up, and they're continuing. So that's another challenge for us because we have no control over the supply chain that actually requires us for use. So, and labor goes up. Right. It's a difficult situation that we do our best. That's why we pave in-house to minimize and get as much return on our investment as possible. Got it.
And the ADA ramps, I know you said 8 to 10 more years. What would you say percentage we've done so far citywide?
Sure. So overall, the program, we're about 70% complete of that program. Unfortunately, we're still roughly about 9 years out to fully complete that program.
Okay.
At the funding level.
At the funding level.
And Director Connect, on our overpasses like Perkins, where we paved from Summer to Walnut Grove?
Yes.
The stretch over the overpass right there is in horrible condition. Is that our responsibility or state, or what do we?
We actually have a special project that we are currently in the process of executing now to replace the decks on those bridges.
So is that part of what this 800,000 is for? Is that what?
No, I'll let Manny. We had this last year.
Yeah, so the funding for that work, there's actually 7 bridges along Sam Cooper that is already in contract to start work on it. The funding on that has already been appropriated. Okay. So this funding is intended to be used for other bridges in the future.
Got it.
A lot of our contractors were severely affected by COVID. So what you've seen going on is a trend that's going on in construction, even though it's increasing now. We had a significant lag last year in contracted work, both paving and these projects. So there's going to be a big gearing up in this to trying to get caught up.
Great. And last, the paving of Channel Avenue on President's Island is very much appreciated. I've heard from several business owners down there, and they will be tremendously excited when they hear that. So thank you. Thank you so much for all your hard work. That's it, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
Thank you. Councilman Jones?
Thank you. My questions are related to the ADA curb compliance as well. And I was trying to find back some old budget books to see what that allocation has been from year to year. So I'm looking at it, if we are allocating $1 million, and that's been, let's say that's been the case for the past 5 to 6 years. My question is, are we, with that $1 million, are we improving the same amount or less?
So I think the number, and I'll let Manny comment on this too, but the number that we complete has been consistent. The material costs and labor costs have gone up, so we are having an effect based on the same reasons for paving. Material and labor costs have going up. So we, obviously funding is stagnated is because we're trying to manage a large network. So, we do try to get as much done as we can. So I think that's the only way.
I get that. And so knowing that, with any type of cost that you have of any type of construction deal, it would appear to me, especially if we know that we will be doing this for the next 8, 9, 10 years. If we're currently bidding these out every time, we're subjecting ourselves to whatever whims of the labor market may be. To me, just like we have a portion of our in-house paving in-house, I would think that if we have the same amount, we can control, maybe there's overtime, but you wouldn't have bidder A for one that's going on right now is McLean and Peabody for a certain amount. Now, I know that every intersection is a little bit different, and I don't know how much the swings are. But with any job, though, for the most part, the largest cost is labor. So if we can control as much as possible, as much as we can, the labor cost versus everyone going to a different subcontractor to do so with a flat amount of money, it would appear, if you say that if they are $100,000 apiece, I'm just throwing numbers out there. Well, 7 years ago, with allocating $1 million, we were able to get 10. But now we're only doing 7, and because of the labor cost is constantly going up, it still would be to me, let's lock in some long-term fixed costs, as much of the fixed costs being labor as we can, knowing that we have the work to do over a set schedule. And so I would be interested to see, and if we look at the numbers to see how much we spend on each one, maybe there's some similarities. I just don't know if the numbers are all over the place. I would like to see just a deeper dive into that. And if we can lock in our labor costs, knowing that we have this work to do over the next 10 years, let's at least control it to the extent we can.
Yes, sir. I'm Manny talking.
So the couple of points on here is we understand that the cost to do the installation of ADA program has increased. So it has not decreased at all. It's constantly increased. In this particular case, however, this program itself is being handled through our MWBE contracting. So the company that is handling this for the city is 100%. So this is our effort to increase the MWBE participation through our contracting effort. So I wanted to make that point as well.
Appreciate it.
So I think we had a conversation similar about, we might have this conversation about curb and gutters. It's another scenario where we have a lot of concrete work that we bid and it's 100% MWBE. I've looked at bringing these resources in-house. We could do that as an in-house operation. There would be a cost, ISLs, equipment, capital, so there is an upfront cost. Now, the only thing we have seen is personnel costs. Because we are to have negotiated agreements with associations, that the concrete finisher that we hire and use is a much higher rate than what the contractors use. So we did do a look analysis at it, and our cost per unit is not exactly equal to what they are. I think we are sometimes getting somewhat of a reasonable cost based on what it would cost us to do this in-house. And that may change, but we have done some analysis.
Okay.
But our labor rate is pretty significantly higher than the market rate that they pay for the same labor, based on what we pay our employees in those trades, in that profession.
Okay, well, I'd just like to have some follow-up conversation and analysis about this. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Chair?
Councilman Johnson?
Yes. Following the same questions as Councilman Jones had, is that true for the sidewalks as well?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, that's all. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions from council members? All right, seeing none, I assume you're ready to vote on this item. And this is the Public Works CIP budget. It's 5 projects and it totals $19.24 million, not 21.84. It was adjusted down by 2.6. Okay, just triple checking that. All right, all those in favor of the Public Works CIP budget signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, paying the chair, the ayes have it. Public Works CIP is approved, and we will roll into
General fund CIP. That was the general fund CIP. That was just the general fund. We haven't talked about sewer or stormwater yet.
Correct.
Yes.
I just call it Public Works.
It's okay.
And then there's Public Works Sewer against Public Works Stormwater. So we're going to go into Public Works Sewer Fund next. So I have a motion and a second. All right, it has been moved by Councilman Carlisle, seconded by Councilman Smiley. Director Connect, the floor is yours for Public Works Sewer Fund.
Thank you, Chairman. So council members, again, several didn't hear this. Public Works has 3 different funds, 2 enterprise funds, a sewer and stormwater fund. Because of their funding source, they have their own sources of revenues and their own sources of capital, because we borrow, use those revenues to fund capital needs separate and apart. So that's why you have 3 different funding for Public Works capital requests. Same for operating. So the first project will be, and just to give you an overview before I jump in this real quick, so obviously the city has a major wastewater treatment and collection system. We have a network of 3,200 miles of sanitary sewer lines that vary anywhere from 6 inches all the way up to 108 inches. So they're significant. We have 2 major wastewater treatment plants to handle 60 billion gallons of wastewater annually. That serves a population of roughly 1.5 million people, because we serve more than just Memphis. We serve everybody practically in this area. If you want to know our customers, Millington, Lakeland, Bartlett, Collierville, Germantown, Horn, and Shelby County. So that's our current profile, and that's just an FYI, and that network that extends into those areas. So in terms of this budget, the first item is going to be our rehab existing cover line. This cover line provides funding for basically emergency needs of our sewer system that I mentioned, that we may have unforeseen issues. We have to do a capital project or funding to repair major sewer system or sewer components. This is what we use to fund those projects. So we would transfer money out of this to fund, example, like we're going to rehab or replace a 72-inch sewer line that's failing or near failing in the city somewhere. This would be the allocation you would use to replace or rehab that section. The next slide, please. We have an obligation to, and we have not done this, but soon you'll hear about this. We are under a federal consent decree for our sewer system. We were sued by the state of Tennessee, the Tennessee Clean Water Network, in federal court because of the condition and issues facing our sanitary sewer collection system. So we agreed and settled on a $250 million 10-year program that was to assess and rehabilitate those 3,200 miles of sewers. So we are in year 8 of this. And so you'll see that so far we have spent $157 million on this program. Again, this helps us address issues involving the condition and the needs of that collection system. So we get funding both, this funding is basically an allocation of our sewer revenue bonds, you can see. We may use PAYGO sometimes, but this is sewer revenue bonds because we go to market and sell bonds based on the revenues I mentioned to fund this program. We may also get SRF, State Revolving Fund. I've come to the council and presented that information because those loans are 0.6% or 0.7%. So we try to maximize that opportunity over revenue bonds. So this is, again, funding that program that is in year 8 and has years of, we have several years to go. This shows out year spending that probably will shift or change depending on that because we may have a continuing requirement beyond 10 years just to kind of maintain and rehabilitate our existing system in addition to what we do on the first slide. Next slide, please. South Plant expansion. We have, again, 2 major wastewater treatment plants. The South Wastewater Treatment Plant, which is called TE Maxon, which is located in Pigeon Industrial near the new combined cycle facility, TVA facility is right there, handles basically everything south of Poplar Avenue flows to that plant. So if you just want to know geographically how that flow happens. It's a funnel through our network to those plants. The plant was constructed and put in service in 1975. And since that time, we have had to do certain upgrades, modernization. We, several years ago, identified a significant modernization upgrade that was needed to the plant. So we started that. We hired a company called CDM Smith under what we call a Construction Manager at Risk program, a CMAR. And under the CMAR, they're upgrading and doing all the work that's identified and agreed upon. So this funding goes to support that program. We were also able to get a WIFIA loan, $159 million WIFIA loan for this project, for the total $325 million we'll spend there. And that's all funding sources. So this is programmatically adding to this. We spent $79 million roughly so far on this. And again, this is just our funding contribution, not the WIFIA funding contribution. Is not included in this, but we're allocating another $8 million in sewer cash, PAYGO, towards this project. As I said, we have 3 funding sources going towards that project. The next one, please, is our Stiles plant modification. Stiles, again, we're on Stiles. The other one was the South Plant Stiles in the same location, same facility. Again, these are also ancillary upgrades, modernizations, similar to the other ones, a different project because it's a different aspect of the project. So we've broken it up into segments, still funded by various other funds, federal, state, and in this case, we're using PAYGO or sewer revenue bonds. But this one is allocating this year, $60 million is go to, this year's allocation is going for the plan of the current year, and it's all using PAYGO. We spent $15.3 million so far to date on that project. The next one is Stiles WWTF biosolids upgrades. So again, this is a South Plant project. Biosolids means that we have residuals left over from the wastewater treatment process, from the biological breakdown of organic material. That's a nice way to say it. And what's left is called biosolids. It's a material that has to be handled and still managed. So it gets moved over to our network of lagoons, where further biological processes happen, mostly anaerobic, and we generate gas or other byproducts that we utilize for energy production. And at the South Plant, we send biogas to TVA. Well, we're trying to get that system up and running. We've had some challenges, but that will ultimately power homes because it's a useful bin product. So that's a creative way we utilize that resource. So we're in the need to upgrade the facility down there. We have to cover lagoons and build ancillary structures and do some other projects. So this is going towards that. There's been zero funding to date. This is a project we've identified. Part of it's a component project of the WIFIA loan as well, and an upgrade that's needed to help kind of maintain that facility and ensure that it has the needed aspects of biosolids operations for what we intend to do. The next one is our FY22 service unsewered cover line. This is a cover line again. We fund this every year depending on what we need. This project funds extending sewer lines to areas which do not have sewers. So there are areas that we don't have sewers. The city in the development project, now I can talk to this, or others may talk to this. The developer has an obligation to build the network of sewers in the development. We are required to bring the sewer lines to that development so that we can connect city sewer. This funds that. those types of projects. It's an annual kind of allocation. And the next one is FY21, this is FY22, I'm sorry, there's a typo. This is the miscellaneous subdivision outfall cover line. This project funds the new subdivisions in the system. So let's say we have a failing or someone has septic, they want to come off the septic and become part of our network. We could use these funds to help to make that happen. So it's different. One is a new service to a development. One is maybe in its existing subdivision that just doesn't have sewer services. And the next one is our sludge disposal earth complex. This is another project, the Maxim for sludge disposal. Sludge is the final leftover remnants of the biosolids process, and we have to handle it for it to get land applied. So this is just a funding for that project. This is another component of the South Plain extension. It's again, multi-phases, a lot of different moving components of it. This is one component of the project itself. $77,000 has been spent. We're allocating $2 million in sewer capital, PAYGO, sewer cash towards this project. I'm getting done to sewer, I promise. The sewer project, the next one is a covered anaerobic lagoon. This is for, I think this is for actually Stiles, the North Plant, if I recall. We are in the, no, I'm sorry, this is Maxon, because it's got the Whitfield loan. I mentioned a minute ago about biosolids handling and the breakdown of materials. We're going to cover one of our lagoons to help recruit the gas and to make it more efficient. So there's a $17 million spend to date and a $5 million in sewer cash allocation for that project. I think I missed one right there. Hold on a second, I apologize. Nope, that's it. I thought there was something. The Stiles is a carry forward, and I can talk about that. So the last slide is the carry forward slide for the sewer fund. And you'll see, this is a little sticker shock here, but there is $321 million in carry forward. So as I spoke to, we have large projects ongoing in the sewer fund. We've been allocating funding year over year towards those projects, knowing that the funds are going to be spent. The sewer assessment and rehab, you see there's a breakdown, but there's some money that's coming, but there's some money that comes from PAYGO, some comes from sewer revenue bonds. But all these funds are going to be spent. We've been programmatically planning to spend those funds. So like, for example, the South Plant, I told you $325 million that we're going to spend. So that shows that the receipt of those funds and or use of those funds is going to be applied. So we will eventually not have any more funds allocated every year. We're just doing it piecemeal because that's how we can afford to do it. Stiles, same thing, Stiles Plant modification, I spoke to that. So these are the funds that we've been building up or applying to those projects so that we have what's necessary to complete the projects themselves. So I hope I covered that sufficiently. I didn't go too fast. I'm glad to take any questions about the sewer fund.
Thank you. So essentially the carry forward is on purpose.
Yes.
It's intended and planned versus like how we handle other carry forwards.
Exactly.
Okay. Thank you. Councilman Logan.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Director Connett. How much is in the unsewered cover line fund?
And Councilman Logan, if you could use your mic, that'd be helpful.
Oh, sorry. It's on.
So this is just a cover line. So we're just putting $1 million in there in case we need to use it. If we don't use it, it goes back into the sewer fund.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Warren.
Is the Stiles Plant the plant that's up by the airport?
Yes. The Stiles Plant is run by the DeWitt Plain Airport.
Okay. And is that the one that's going to get the cover?
That's the South Plant. That's the one down at Maxim.
So are those at the Stiles Plant covered at this point?
There are covered lagoons there, yes, sir.
So they're covered now?
Yes, sir. They both have covered lagoons, both facilities do.
Thank you very much.
And we sell biogas from that plant to the American Yeast if you wanted to.
I just know that sometimes, depending on where the wind is, it doesn't smell like they're covered.
So I'll make this one comment. We're not making ice cream with these facilities because that's a common thing. And unfortunately, what happens. And we do our best to do odor control. We're spending a lot of money at the south plant for odor control because Boxtown, Whitehaven, and several other communities often speak about the odors. So we're spending quite a bit of money in odor control. The north plant will have a large project coming in the future because it needs to be modernized. So we are always aware of that. We do try to do our
I just
best.
didn't know the business that well, but I understand it.
I welcome anybody to come do a tour. I'll give you a tour. I think
You'll never forget it.
It's
an outdoor tour, but bring your mask. And you'll understand why the people at these facilities get hazard pay.
I welcome anybody to do a physical tour. I'll walk you through, explain to you what's going on. It is an experience you'll never forget. I guarantee it. So,
Councilman Ford.
Thank you. I just got to ask you one question. I know a week or so ago I called you. Well, I had one extra call pertaining to Redbud and Charlotte. They had this green slime coming out of the sewer. Did y'all ever find out what it was?
Yes, sir. So that was a
Since we talking
drainage
about
issue.
Boxtown and all down there, we have problems down that way, and that's part of Walker Homes almost as close.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yeah, we had an engineer go out and look at it. There was a drainage issue out there. There was some blocked drainage systems, so they did clean it and hopefully get it open and running. We didn't see anything that would otherwise the stagnated water that was contributing to that. That was what the engineer identified. So hopefully we've rectified that. But they did send a crew out there and clean multiple drainage inlets along that area.
And one reason why I'm asking that particular question, sometimes they call the media before they call us. Sometimes 311 don't work. Okay? They call 311. That's when they end up calling the media. And if the media, anybody listening, they need to call one of those council members. Not 311 sometimes, okay? But it was kind of embarrassing seeing it on the news. We didn't know anything about it. You didn't know anything about it. Probably you may have seen it on the news also. But at least, we want to make sure it's rectified because I grew up right around there with people. Yeah, but I just wanted to make sure that y'all found out what was going on. And it was kind of ridiculous looking at it on TV. Yeah. But I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Jones.
Thank you. Is there? I'll go back to perhaps going back to the presentation that Mr. Walker provided yesterday. I know he looked at a number of the different perhaps bond issues that we'll look at. Do we have that schedule of how much? I'm looking at these, and these are some of them capital pay goals, some are revenue bonds. Do we have a total listing of each source of funds for these projects? Because I added up in this presentation, $17,750,000. Will we only be issuing $17 million? It could be a different amount because I saw capital pay go somewhere. So what would be helpful would be sort of a breakdown of the sources of funding in total for the stormwater fund. And if we do the same thing for the sewer, for the other ones, just having an idea of where we are getting the money for these projects.
Yeah, most of these have already been obtained.
Okay.
So we have already we did a sewer bond, we did stormwater bond. So these are.
So those proceeds are sort of like here. Okay, gotcha.
So we should maybe say these are bond proceeds, not new bond issuances.
Yes. So that would be helpful. Okay. Because what I was looking for is, in the reports that we have, I knew it wouldn't be under general obligation bonds, but still, if there's something that we issued bonds for a year ago, 6 months, but these are the projects finally coming to fruition, that would have been helpful to put things in context of what we're looking at. Thank you.
Yes, sir. It's a good point. Well taken, sir.
Okay. Thank you very much. Any comments or questions from council members? All right. I assume you all are ready for a vote on the Public Works Sewer CIP Fund, and it is a total of, 9 line items. that I've got totaling 121 million between both capital pay-go and sewer revenue bonds. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? Opinion chair, the ayes have it. Sewer fund CIP is approved. Now we will go on to the stormwater CIP. Do I have a motion and a second?
Second.
I have a motion by Councilman Carlisle, second by Councilman Warren. Director Connect, floor is yours.
Thank you, sir. So the stormwater fund is a relatively newer fund. It's been around since 2006, so it's got a few years on it now, almost 15. It was developed and approved by council as a way to address flooding issues across the city. Historically, before that, stormwater-related drainage issues were general funded. But there was a rationale developed to create what we call the stormwater fund. So on the MLGW bill, you have sewer fees and you'll have stormwater fee. The stormwater fee varies a little bit based on what's called the standard family unit, SFU, and the type of residence. The commercial and industrial pay a different fee. Residential, based on whether you're an apartment or a single family residence, will have its own fee. It's based on impervious area, which means how much improvement you have, rooftop, sidewalk, driveway. That's how the calculation is derived. So if anybody asks you how do they come up with that, it's based on what's called impervious area on the property. So I just wanted to kind of give you that. You'll see in the operating budget that a lot more about this stormwater fund and the fees. I guess I'll say the same thing about the sewer fund because how the funds come into play in terms of funding our capital budgets. So in this first one is the design cover line. This is a cover line. This is to cover improvements to the existing drainage system or any new improvements to the drainage system. We have so another thing to explain, we're very fortunate in Memphis. We have a separate stormwater and sewer system, completely separate, which is very, very advantageous. Many major cities have combined systems, which are very problematic, especially when it comes to consent decree and sewer issues. And the reason our consent decree was $250 million, because we don't have a combined system. Atlanta, other cities have billions and billions of dollars of consent decrees. So because of that, we are fortunate. But because we also have a separate system, we have a separate network that has to be maintained though. So we have a large network of big drainage channels. You may have seen them, the concrete channel linings throughout the city. They're anywhere from 10 feet wide to 125 feet wide. So they carry a lot of stormwater. We are responsible for those improved drainage systems. You often hear about citizens about unimproved raw ditches, streams, channels, Mississippi River, the city doesn't maintain anything unimproved. Only those concrete channel linings or major drainage systems or pipes or anything in a drainage easement are we responsible for. So I wanted to kind of explain that. We'll cover this a little bit more. We completed a big master plan. So we identified where all the problems are in the city. We were in the process of identifying that through a comprehensive study of all of our drainage systems. The city is broken up geographically into like 37 basins. These are big areas where the water is funneled in those basins by gravity to drainage systems, getting larger and larger. All of them end up in Mississippi. Wolf, Nankana, and the Luce are the main drainage conveyances, but the Wolf and the Luce, and the Wolf and the Nankana, the big ones that kind of we are most aware of in the Mississippi River because it affects us. But I mean, all of those networks, we are trying to evaluate and understand where the problems are. Many of you hear about flooding in your community, so we have funding allocated that we're trying to identify to help address flooding throughout the city. And so this cover line goes towards that, and then the next one goes towards that one. They're both kind of go hand in hand. And the reason they're separated is on the next slide, which is the drainage SD cover line, which is $9 million in revenue bonds, and this one was, clarified, $5.2 million revenue bonds, is it? We were, knowing that we have a large network and a lot of issues going on, we went out and hired a stormwater program manager. Under the SAR 10, under the consent decree, we also hired a program manager, Black and Beach. But under this program, we hired a stormwater program manager, All World Project Management is the program manager. And we're very excited about that, obviously, because that's a great opportunity for a local minority business firm to help lead a really important initiative. And they've already started with that. And so Councilwoman Robinson's not here. But for example, we issued a project in Whitehaven under their leader and guidance for them to help alleviate flooding that's affecting people down there in Santa Clara. And some of you may have heard about Santa Clara. But anyway, this funding goes to that program. We have a pretty significant needs overall. based on these studies, we're identifying large needs. So their goal is to help us identify projects and help us execute those projects based on the outcome of those studies. So this funding goes primarily towards the funding of that All Worlds Project Management, Stormwater Program Manager. The next slide is our flood control ST cover line. The city has, so something really great happened for the city recently. Under federal law, the Corps of Engineers is responsible for levees and flood walls up and down the Mississippi River. However, in Memphis, we have responsibility for the flood walls and levees, and that's been in place for many, many years. There's various reasons historically for that. However, we were successfully, in collaboration with Congressman Cohen, able to get Memphis's flood walls and levees added to the next WRDA Act, the Water Development Act. So that 2022 bill will allow the Corps to take ownership of those levees and flood walls, so the city will not have any responsibility anymore. However, there are pump stations that did not come with that. They are still ours. So the network, the pump stations have been around for many, many years. The one in Gayosa was put in place in 1910, and we have some that have been since 1960s. But their goal is very important, is that when the river's up and the water can't drain by gravity, we have to shut the gates and pump the water, the stormwater from inside the city out. Otherwise, we'd have significant flooding occurring when the river's up twice a year. So these pump stations are very important. We've been rehabbing and modernizing them for a number of years. So there's several ongoing now. So this $2.2 million is going to go towards projects underway right now for the cover line to fund those projects for those pump stations. The next one is the design ST curb and gutter. I spoke briefly about this early on. We fund curb and gutter with stormwater funds because it is a stormwater conveyance. It is part of the street, but because it's connected to the drainage system and it actually manages stormwater flow. If you've ever noticed, our streets are designed with what's called a crown. So it's got like a very high center flowing out towards the outside of it. And then there's curbs, and not all of them, most of them have curbs and gutters that funnel that water to the drainage system. So we can allocate stormwater funds to maintain those, not the street. So we do that with this funding. And as Councilman Jones mentioned earlier, those are all concrete. So there's a project that's managed through engineering and bid every year. The next one is our flood mitigation land acquisition cover line. When we have to purchase land, so detention and retention are very important aspects of flood mitigation, because we ultimately have a certain area of land, developments happen, and so stormwater concentration happens differently depending on how much development has happened. So that impervious area I mentioned, the more impervious area you have, the faster stormwater gets into your system and causes flooding. So we need to buy land occasionally to store stormwater. So that's what funding would go towards. This cover line would go towards if we need to buy land to create a flood detention or retention and detention area. So that would be what this funding would be for. And then the last one is our bridge repair ST line. So as I mentioned before, we have to manage our bridges. We have a general fund obligation for that. But we also have an opportunity because there's 350 bridges that are over drainage, over channels, over conveyances. And if that system, that bridge is a hindrance or a blockage, or there's a scour or stormwater related costs associated with that, we can use stormwater funds for that aspect of the bridge, either expanding it for more flow or doing a repair for the water, the stormwater or the drainage is called a scour. So we can allocate stormwater funds for that specific part of the bridge itself, not for the entire bridge itself necessarily, but for the components of it that are stormwater attributable. And this is again a repair aspect, a cover line of $500,000 towards that. And that's my last one. Where's the cover? Okay. We don't have any carry forward. No, that's right. No carry forward.
All right. Thank you very much, Councilman Logan.
I'm sorry. Thank you, Chair. Mr. Director Connect, where is in this presentation, or is it in there, the Allen Basin and the resiliency plan and Rodney, Baber, and Kennedy, all the work that's going on the north side as it relates to flood mitigation? Is that going to be addressed in any of this with any of these funds?
No, that was,
part of it?
that was a special project that had special funding that was managed, through parks, yes.
So actually that project in the Raleigh, area it's driven by HCD. However, that lake is actually part of a stormwater project, which we, allocated, some funds for that project. So wherever we have the ability to, like Director Connect indicated, the use of potentially detention basins, we handle that through the stormwater funds. So in this case, the funding that's being asked here, it does not include that because that's already been previously appropriated.
In the Raleigh Town Hall, there, the stormwater fund built that facility there in front of that. That was the stormwater funded function. So that's an example of a big project, but they may have a stormwater component funding of it. One's wet and one's dry. One's going to hold water all the time. One is just going to hold water when it needs to hold water, if I recall.
So if I could, that project is actually the HUD resiliency project. It was a $60 million awarded project, awarded to the county. We do have some participation on that. It's roughly about $4 million that was used to offset or leverage the grant itself. And those funds have already been appropriated and transferred to the county as well.
There was like, you want to explain, there was a South Cypress Creek component of that too. There was several projects. One was the that one you're talking about. Millington got a big portion of it, and we got the other portion for the other project. So one was South Cypress Creek, and one is that other project, Wolf River project. It was the HUD resiliency grant we're talking about.
But the part that was allocated for.
No. It was specifically outlined and approved as a grant process for the HUD resiliency grant.
And Chief McGowan, you might want to clarify.
Sure. Councilwoman, Mr. Zena in the Office of Resiliency is managing that entire HUD resiliency grant. So it's a good point. We owe you an update on the progress of that, just holistically, because it does cut across a lot. So I'll ask him to come and give an overall update on that resiliency project, because it touched a number of areas in the county, but that's an important part of the project up there at Baber that goes along with some of the Accelerate Memphis improvements we're making in other areas. So I'll ask for an update for you so that we can all be level set on where that project sits.
All right, thank you. Any other comments, Councilman Johnson?
More than a comment with a question. Do you have any problems locating contractors to do all of this work?
Well, you know, we are seeing challenges in the contracting community. We were recently, Chief McGowan, myself, and others were talking to the paving contractors, the big ones, Lehman, APAC, and Standard, because we want to get a gauge on their productivity because they're behind, and they're all challenged with labor. The labor market is a challenge for them, so they're having difficulty. So we're having trouble with the labor market in city. You'll see that when I do my presentation operating budget. We're struggling to get heavy equipment operators, mechanical operators. The market is just very challenging right now. It's a very dynamic situation. So we're seeing what's happening both in construction materials is really going to be an issue for us because the price of materials is really higher than anybody thought because supply demand is really a disparate right now. Mm-hmm. And labor is kind of following that trend.
Okay, thank you. I think that's important for people to realize that, and they may be expecting great things to happen overnight. But we are in need of labor, and that's people who are willing to work to please come out and fill these positions. And they're all throughout the city. So I appreciate the work. It's a lot of work that I see that you're anticipating to do, and I appreciate your efforts on all of it. But we need help from the citizens as well, I think. Right. Thank you.
And Chief Ford, do you want to speak to this as well?
I was just going to mention, thank you for saying that, Councilwoman Johnson. When we spoke with, I'll use the asphalt contractors as an example, they asked if we could spread the word. All of them are in need of folks to work, and they pay an excellent wage. So Lehman, Roberts, APAC, and Standard are all looking for employees. And it's critical. Everybody in Memphis and Shelby County uses our roads, and they want them to be good. And it's only as good as the amount of asphalt we can put down. And if they're challenged with labor, we kind of get in this vicious cycle of we don't have enough people to improve the road. So it's a great career opportunity, as Robert said, all of our contractors. And what we'll do is we've asked them to give us a listing of their openings. from all of our contractors so that we can get our work done on behalf of the citizens. So we'll share that with you because we know that's important. You can help us recruit for us and for these companies that do work on our behalf.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Any other questions from council members? Comments? Chief Ford, before we go to a vote?
Yes, thank you. And I just wanted to mention to Councilman Jones, thank you for, asking about the funding sources within each category as we go through. I mean, I know they do it on each separate page so that you have a summary. I do provide a summary in the overview so that breaks out exactly what we're asking for. Obviously, in the divisions, the regular divisions, that's what we come to you for is GEO bond funding. But there is, on page 10 of my overview presentation, it breaks out the capital pay-go sewer amount of $71 million, sewer revenue bonds of $50 million, capital pay-go stormwater of $0.4 million, and stormwater revenue bonds of 17.4, and then our local other 2.6. So I do give it to you, but by the time you get to the divisions, that summary seems like a vague memory. So we'll add those to you, and thank you. Every time we get feedback from council members, it helps us create better presentations for you to have more information that you want to see and you want to hear. So that helps us make just better presentations. So thank you.
Thank you.
And actually to clarify, those are stormwater bond proceeds. Yes, sir. So they're from a previous bond issue.
Okay, thank you very much. We're going to go to a vote on these 6 line items from the stormwater CIP fund totaling $17.75 million, and it's a mix of revenue bonds and capital pay-go. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. Stormwater CIP fund does pass. Thank you all very much. All right.
A lot easier than Scott Street.
All right.
Good to laugh about it.
The floor is yours for presentation.
Good evening. I'm Terry Daniels. I am the chairman of Memphis River Parks Partnership. With me is my great colleague, Art Davis, who is our CEO of the organization, and we're so glad to be here today. And just a comment real quick about the prior presentation. Chief Ford, if you need a good bond underwriter on any of those bonds, I think I may know one. just to level set the playing field. Now, back to Memphis River Parks Partnership. Thank you all so much for giving us this time and opportunity to speak today. The projects that we have before you are some really just the maintenance of all the facilities. We are so glad that we have the opportunity to manage and operate all these city assets on your behalf, and we try to do it with the utmost respect. But as you know, as wear and tear sets in, it is time for us to, look at the maintenance of those and how we can look at them and make them better. One of those projects is the Mud Island North Gate. It is the entrance that is adjacent to what people really think is Mud Island, and that is across the bridge. And as you get there, it looks like a wasteland. The Memphisville thing is still there. So what this project would do would clean all that area up, take out of the cage, make a gutter gate, make it presentable, make it something that is attractive for residents and visitors alike to come over and easily get to the park. We've had lots of visitors either come look at the Memphis sign or just want to get out there at that park, and we want to make sure it's something attractive. Next slide, please. The next slide really shows you what's happening there. Part of it is not only the gate and the improvements around the gate, but it's also moving the recycling storage. and just moving some things around and making sure it's pedestrian friendly for pedestrian and biking. So the graph right there kind of shows you what is going to happen there. The next project is another project that's near and dear to all of us, is the Mud Island monorail. And as you look at the monorail, people say, oh, wow, I missed the monorail. Why is it not working? Well, we have heard your feedback. We did the work. We had someone fly in that told us what it would take to not only get the monorail up and running, but also how can we run it more efficiently. So that project is about $4.8 million. That would put the monorail back into service and also reduce the cost for ART to operate it and make it operate a lot more efficiently than it was. I had a conversation with one of the council women earlier today. Right now, the bridge is still open. The monorail is closed because for safety concerns, we cannot operate it. So in order to bring this completely up into service, it is $4.8 million. Any questions on that, please? Okay, great. The next one, parking lots. A huge portion of our revenue are the parking lots that we serve and we manage for you. On our Wagner, Crump, and Mud Island parking lots, we have severe cracks, holes, large potholes, more like craters, more so than potholes, and deterioration. And it's just from wear and tear. We know our downtown city streets and parking lots get lots of visitors, and people like to make lots of donuts in them as well. We found that lately. So about $170,000 to resurface those parking lots and get them back up to date. One of the things that I do want to point out, Memphis River Parks Partnership has paid out significant amount of claims for damages, trips and falls in these parking lot tires and things. So it is quite costly for us, these parking lots being unusable in some places. The next project is escalator, elevator, and roof repair on Mud Island. I'm sure you probably saw the newspaper articles. Our summer series at Mud Island starts after Memorial Day. We try to keep Mud Island presentable, up and running. We program it, we staff it, but also it's the maintenance of a facility that was opened in the early 80s and where it comes now. One of the things that gets the most wear and tear, particularly whether the monorail is working or not, are the elevators and the escalators. And as you all know, some of those things are as old as the park is open. And so we've repaired as much as we can to now all of them need a complete overhaul in order to make it work. So that's about $1 million, really $915,000 is the much needed overhaul to all of those to keep them in pristine order. Another one of those liabilities that we've also had to pay recently as well. We are also have a carry forward of $200,000 from the amphitheater that we had as well.
All right. Chief McGowan or Chief Ford, do y'all want to add a little context?
Thank you. So just to avoid the confusion, Mr. Daniels and Mr. Davis have presented everything that was submitted as an ask for CIP. Obviously, you can see in your summary, we are proposing to fund the Mud Island North Gate renovation of the $323,000. Obviously, we don't have the availability in our CIP to do $4 million on the monorail. However, on the project for the resurfacing of the Wagner and Crump, we are looking at other areas where I can get some pickup and some other funds to help kind of fix some of those potholes and get through that. And then, of course, obviously the escalators and roof repairs would be another $1 million. And the roof repairs is part of the Accelerate Memphis. So we do have some Accelerate Memphis money that is going straight to Memphis River Parks. So I just wanted to be clear on that our only ask for this year in GeoBond funding is for the North Gate renovation.
Okay, thank you very much. Councilman Warren?
is there a possibility that some of the transportation money that we're going to be getting from the Biden Act might be going to the monorail, since it is transportation going to and from those areas, and public transportation? And that might be some way we could find that money if possible. I don't know.
Sure. I think it's too early to tell. The guidance is not clear, but we'll find out more. But I wouldn't rule it out as a possibility of a source, just because it's so broad reaching.
I did see Shirley's eyebrows go up, so that's a good sign.
Right.
And Tyree started writing furiously. Okay. Is that all, Councilman Warren? All right, thank you. Councilman Jones?
Thank you, and I'm looking attentively at the monorail, and if, as part of Accelerate Memphis, that's dealing with the amphitheater, is that correct?
Yes, Councilman, we allocated basically $4 million because we have spoken with our MRPP partners, and we knew there was some basic amount that needed to go into the amphitheater. I think it was 2 point something just to make it functional,
okay.
About $900,000 to do the elevators and the escalators, and then some other for the general improvements of the area. Clearly, there's a much bigger lift if you want to do a much bigger project, but that was how we arrived at the $4 million, was to make the amphitheater functional, make the elevators and escalators functional, and to do the other kinds of things. I think the information we had at the time was there was not enough, it wasn't clear exactly about the monorail and whether that investment was going to be made or worth making based on the overall use. So we understand that we have to get a value on that to bring it back. But at the time, that's what we allocated the Accelerate Memphis for, okay, for those items.
And so I think that we would, if we're going to make those, let's just call them basic improvements to Mud Island to make it attractive to people, we need to have a way for them to get over there to enjoy it. And so I just think that it'll be a waste of money for us to spend it, and we don't have a way for more people to get across to enjoy whatever it is that we're going to be doing. So I know the Accelerate Memphis is an ambitious plan, and I'm all for providing opportunities for people to enjoy Memphis, to enjoy outside the parks, the libraries, everything that's associated with that. So I'm going to be scouring through the budget for us to try to find a way to fund that, because if we're going to be spending the money over there anyway, we're shortchanging ourselves. To me, it's a waste of money for us to be putting it over there. And the main way, you have people who may have mobility issues, who can't walk. I don't know how far it is, but it's a nice little walk if you've ever walked it from a concert, whatever the case may be. But I just think that we're doing a disservice to the public if we're putting the money in there, and we're not. And I'm not saying to revamp the whole park. I know that's a greater ask. But if we're putting money over there to improve it, the elevators, the amphitheater, to make people go over there, but we don't have the main mode of transportation to get there, I think we are. It's not practical in my mind for us to be spending the money if we're not going to make a more adequate investment. And so I'm going to, somehow try to find some money to fund that, even if it requires us adding a little bit to the GO to do that, operating, whatever the case may be. But I just think that for us to be spending the money over there, it doesn't make any sense for us not to have a way for people to get over there. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Thank you, Councilman Jones. That's the second hint we've gotten today about a potential amendment that may come, and let's continue to have discussions about it between now and wrap up, probably offline with Councilman Jones. Councilman Ford?
Talking about the monorail.
If that's your pleasure.
Yes, sir. Before we make any decision on that, I need y'all to go pull some history of that monorail, why that monorail was not used. Okay? Death was in it, okay? So please pull history. That's why everybody started walking. They quit using that monorail. Okay? They shut it down. Pull the history of it. This is more problem than having it going back and forth. But if you can pull that history, you'll see where I'm coming from. Okay? That's all I want to say about that monorail.
Okay, thank you, Councilman Ford. And Mr. Daniels, I'm going to ask you, so y'all made a request for the $4.8 million. It wasn't included in the mayor's proposal. What was y'all's backup plan if y'all weren't able to receive funding from the CIP budget?
So we would not do that project at all unless we receive CIP funding. For one, it's a city asset, and then two, it is too cost prohibitive for us to do it. And as everyone knows, we are firmly focused on delivering to this community world-class park at this moment as well. So it's like, if we're raising money, let's finish raising the money that we need for Tomley Park to get that open, and then we'll focus on tackling other projects as they come along.
Okay, thank you very much. Councilman Jones again?
Thank you. And I still would say that for me, what was, I understand the back and forth between Tomley, Memphis, and May. For me, though, I think and this is editorial, just my, stating this, I know the ship has already sailed. Mud Island should have been a bigger priority than Tomley. That's just my thoughts on it. That's the more underutilized public project that's under the auspices of the Memphis River Parks Partnership. And so still with the plans, Memphis River Parks is in the process of disrupting Memphis' biggest moneymaker because of the modifications being proposed. And so just my opportunity to express to you, under the management, that should have been the priority, to get Mud Island up and running, as opposed to interrupting Memphis' biggest moneymaker. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Councilman Johnson?
Yes. For clarity, when you asked for approximately $5 million for this monorail improvement, what all did that include? Was that strictly for the monorail, or was that for any other improvements of the facility?
That is strictly an overhaul of the monorail and its system.
Okay. Now tell me about that $324,000 gate you need.
So the gate that we need is more so than the gate. It is also cleaning up that area, taking out the existing infrastructure there. And can we go to slide number 2 in the deck so we can talk about what's actually happening over there in that project? It's the diagram of the work. So as you see from the diagram, we're gonna update the existing gatehouse there, clean that up because it just looks forward. If you look outside the gate, where the recycling things are currently, it doesn't look very attractive as you're going there by bike or walking. So it's cleaning all of that, planting, you see the plantings that are outlined there as well. Also adding bike lanes and decals and all those things for there, and also making it pedestrian friendly. So the markings and the crossings, because right now you have the mixture of people going to the marina, people going over there, going home that live there, people going to drop off recycling, bikes. So it is very confusing as to who has the right of way and cleaning that up. And as we have experienced, when we program things over there at Mud Island, we're seeing more and more visitors that are coming to do various things. So it's like, how do we make sure we keep everyone safe? And this is the attempt to not only keep them safe and make sure we have the right markings there, but also make sure it's attractive so they want to go and inviting. And just to comment to one of Councilman Jones' points earlier, what we've seen with us doing programmatic things on Mud Island is the increased attendance. People are getting there. It may not be the monorail that they're particularly using because it's not viable, but we see people not only parking over in the lot on the north side, parking in the lot and walking over, but his points are very well taken.
I think Councilman Jones, or Councilman Johnson, are you all set? Okay. Councilman Jones.
Just to clarify too, though, that is the original monorail, correct? So we're talking about one that's almost 50 years old.
It is,
okay.
Without a doubt. It is the original monorail. And one of the things that for the longest was a barrier for rehabbing the monorail was there was no one that could work on it. And Mr. Davis searched high and low to find somebody that will actually come and work on the monorail of the equipment because it is not even manufactured anymore.
So if you can find some parts for 82 Pinto, I'll be looking for that too. All right.
And keep in mind, you know, I'm from Alabama, so I know a lemon when we see it. We're not going to go back with the same equipment from 1982.
All right. Everybody good, or council? Okay. I think we're going to go ahead and vote. And it's a bit tedious when I say the amount and the number of projects, but it's just to clarify and make sure that we get the numbers right as we're moving forward to wrap up. So we're going to say there's been a motion that's been properly seconded for one project in the Memphis River Parks capital improvement budget for a total of $323,000. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? Opinion of chair, the ayes have it. Memphis River Parks CIP budget does pass. And is there any other business before this committee this evening? Okay. We'll see you at 3:30, and everybody remember to take a look at the schedule because we have made some adjustments, but we'll begin back tomorrow at